So, you might be wondering, since I'm an author, and I'm rather vocal about my being an author, where are all my books? Well, I'm also young, and I'm working in a somewhat wounded industry, and now, thanks to certain socio-political and economic circumstances, that wound has somewhat festered in many respects. There are next to no publishers looking for anything, and even fewer agents that I can find. And when it comes to, say, a medieval fantasy novel, there aren't a lot of takers, actually, but because it's down to me and thousands of others, and I'm just sort of getting lost in the stacks. So I've decided to forge my own path. I've decided to self-publish. I know, I know, but I think I have a decent shot at this. I mean, tell me what you think, but I like to think I'm a pretty good author, and maybe not too terrible, if nothing else. And there are certainly some very successful authors out there who I honestly think I'm a little bit better than. Not to point any fingers or name any names, um, but so very soon I'm going to be publishing with the book one in my White Worm Chronicles, the fantasy series, and I intend to follow that one up with at least a release, uh, hopefully sometime around Halloween, around the start of autumn, maybe. A sort of occult thriller, which I finished up just last year, and which I'm particularly proud of, actually, titled Darkest in the Light, and channeling no small amount of classic horror, as well as incorporating some elements of like urban fantasy and I I've heard some people refer to it as YA-ish, which I didn't really see at the time. I know it's a very charged term, YA, but all I can promise you is that it is a mature and honest take on the supernatural, and with elements of the sort of classic occult thrown in. You know, witches and demons and ghosts and ghouls and all sorts. Think like The Devil Rides Out meets Twin Peaks with a hefty dose of like, I guess, sort of like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer thrown in for good measure. Um, but first, I'm doing The Wolf at the Door, the book one in the White Worm Chronicles, which I have talked about in the past at great length, no less. My goal with that one was to sort of form a middle ground, I guess, between like the beautiful and fanciful and idealistic works of my man J.R.R. Tolkien and the more grimdark, serious writing of authors like George R. R. Martin. Um, so I kind of aim for like the style of Martin a bit in many respects, with the very character-driven, introspective narrative, with a bit more of a lighthearted world. I do tend to avoid like really super uber graphic portrayals of like violence and romance, uh, but I do still try to. I try my best to acknowledge how a relatively low magic, at least rare magic, uh, feudal medieval fantasy world might actually operate. There are still quite a lot of injustices, although I suspect a little less extreme injustices than those of the actual Middle Ages. I even have a world map in the works with the help of my incredibly talented father, Bob Freeman, who has his own channel you should definitely check out. He talks about more of like the occult stuff and the witches and ghosts and ghouls and all that stuff. And he's also an excellent artist and a musician. He's a jack of all trades, he is. But yeah, I really can't wait for you to meet some of my characters from Devon, the sort of sickly prince of the kingdom of Wildren, and Audra, the white-eyed sellsword, and yeah, even Rowena Hartman from Darkest in the Light, who's an investigative reporter with a sort of interest in the occult. Um, so yeah, Remember to like and subscribe if you want to know more about my books, or if you just want to hear me talk about nerdy stuff in general. I do a lot of reviews and opinion pieces, if you will. Um, so yeah, stay tuned. I should have more for you soon, my friends. So long for now. Bye.